everyone, my name is Kaylee Sargenson, and I would like to welcome you to this presentation for Research Applications 1 and 2. The proposed study will investigate the long-term health consequences impacted by chronic work stress among remote employees. This presentation will provide background information, study objectives, research methods, statistical and ethical issues, limitations, and references for further information on how chronic work stress among remote employees can impact long-term health. The following question will be investigated in the proposed study. What are the long-term health consequences of chronic work stress among remote employees? Chronic work stress is characterized by a prolonged exposure to workplace demands exceeding an individual's capacity to cope. Long-term exposure to work-related stressors can affect mental and physical well-being. Repeated activation of fight or flight responses can disrupt bodily systems and increase susceptibility to diseases such as autoimmune disorders and cardiovascular diseases. Studies have identified a sharp rise in sedentary behavior, with 67.7% of remote workers engaging in little to no physical exercise. The increase in sedentary lifestyles was accompanied by stress and sleep disturbances, suggesting that remote work may inadvertently contribute to poorer physical health. Similar trends were observed in a study where 32.8% of remote workers reported weight gain, 44.7% failed to consume fruit daily, and 72.9% drank less than 8 glasses of water per day. These findings point to the long-term health risks associated with remote work, particularly those linked to poor eating habits and a lack of physical activity. Chronic work stress in these settings can exacerbate metabolic issues, contributing to weight gain and other related health problems. Previous studies have large sample sizes and longitudinal data tracking workplace stress over time. Many stress measurement tools can be used in this research. The Job Demands Resources model provides a useful framework for understanding how workplace stress and job resources affect employees' mental health. The Perceived Stress Scale is a classic stress assessment instrument. This tool remains a popular choice for helping us understand different situations and how they can affect our feelings and our perceived stress. The Strain Index is one of several tools available to evaluate exposure to musculoskeletal stressors in the workplace in order to predict whether workers are at an increased risk of developing upper extremity disorders. There are limited studies that focus on remote-specific work stressors. Most focus on general workplace stress. Existing studies often focus on short-term health outcomes or specific subpopulations, but there is a notable gap in longitudinal research. In previous studies, there is a lack of intersectional analysis, specifically how stress impacts employees differently based on age, gender, and socioeconomic status. The findings of this study have significant implications for employees, employers, and policymakers. By understanding the long-term health effects of chronic work stress among remote employees, different stakeholders can take proactive measures to improve workplace well-being. One benefit for employees is increased awareness of work stress and health risks. Understanding the impact of chronic stress on mental and physical health empowers employees to take proactive steps to manage stress. Another benefit for employees is a better work-life balance. Employees can learn how to set boundaries, manage time effectively, and prioritize self-care. One benefit for employers is the implementation of health and wellness programs. This could include, but not limited to, virtual counseling services, mindfulness programs, and stress management training. Another benefit for employers is a higher employee retention and reduced turnover rate. Organizations that prioritize stress management have higher retention rates and increased productivity. Benefits for policymakers can include developing regulations that promote healthier work environments for remote employees and set new occupational health guidelines. The main objectives of this study are to identify the long-term health consequences of chronic work stress among remote employees, examine how factors such as job demands, social isolation, and work-life balance impact employee well-being, and to provide recommendations for mitigating stress and improving employee health outcomes. This study design involves collecting data from a large group of remote employees at a single point in time. Participants complete surveys assessing current stress levels, mental health status, and physical health outcomes. This is relatively quick and cost-effective, allowing for large sample sizes. The focus of this study is on individuals whose primary work setting is remote. Full-time remote employees typically experience a more consistent work environment and exposure to remote-specific stressors compared to those who work part-time or in hybrid models. Ensuring that all participants are full-time employees helps to standardize the exposure level to work-related stress and minimizes variability. A minimum of 1 year of remote work ensures that participants have had sufficient exposure to the remote work setting. This also allows for examination of long-term health consequences. The age range of 19 plus is broad enough to capture various career stages. Self-employed individuals can often have different stressors compared to traditional employees. Removing this group helps to maintain consistency. To isolate the effects of chronic work stress, the exclusion of employees with pre-existing conditions that may independently affect long-term outcomes is necessary. Professional networks such as LinkedIn can be used to post study invitations in relevant groups, professional pages, and job forums dedicated to remote work. Contact companies with established remote work policies and request distribution of the survey through internal communications of HR channels. Using social media platforms to engage with groups dedicated to remote work lifestyles. The target sample size is 500 to 1,000 survey participants to ensure significance, but recruiting approximately 50 participants for in-depth interviews to gather qualitative insights. The exposure variable is chronic work stress, as the study seeks to understand its long-term effects on remote employees, using tools such as the Job Strain Index or Perceived Stress Scale. The control variables are to isolate the specific effects of chronic work stress. Some demographic factors include age, gender, industry, work hours, perceived stress levels, and income levels. To measure anxiety, I will utilize the General Anxiety Disorder 7-item scale, which is a self-reported tool that assesses anxiety severity over the past 2 weeks. To measure depression, I will utilize the Beck Depression Inventory or a similar tool to evaluate the severity of depressive symptoms. To measure burnout, I will use the Maslach burnout inventory to assess emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and reduced personnel accomplishments as a component of burnout. To measure sleep quality, I can implement Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index to evaluate sleep patterns, disturbances, and overall sleep quality. To measure cardiovascular health, we can gather data such as blood pressure, heart rate, and any other physician-diagnosed heart conditions. This study will aim to produce reliable, accurate, powerful results through calculating means, medians, and modes for continuous variables such as stress scores, anxiety levels, and sleep quality. Variability will be determined using standard deviations, interquartile ranges, and ranges for key measures. Use of visualizations such as scatter plots, histograms, and bar charts to illustrate the relationships between variables. Regression analysis to assess the relationship between chronic work stress and health outcomes. The null hypothesis for mental health will be that there is no significant association between chronic work stress and mental health outcomes among remote employees. The null hypothesis for physical health will be that there is no statistically significant association between chronic work stress and physical health outcomes among remote employees. The alternative hypothesis for mental health will be that remote employees experiencing chronic work stress will exhibit significantly higher levels of mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, and burnout compared to those with lower stress levels. The alternative hypothesis for physical health will be that remote employees experiencing chronic work stress will report significantly poorer physical health outcomes, including increased risk of cardiovascular problems, higher BMI, and reduced sleep quality compared to their lower stress counterparts. Participants will be fully informed about the study objectives, the procedures involved, the types of data collected, and how the findings will be used. Emphasize that participation is completely voluntary and participants can withdraw at any time without negative consequences. Consent forms outlining potential risks, benefits, and the participants' rights will be given. All identifiers will be removed or replaced with codes to ensure participants remain anonymous. Acknowledge that discussing work-related stress may evoke emotional discomfort. Resources will be given to those who may experience distress. Data will be collected and used exclusively for research purposes related to this study and will not be shared with outside parties without consent. Recruitment strategies will be designed to reach diverse populations of remote employees, avoiding selection bias. Participants may overestimate or underestimate their stress levels and health symptoms when self-reporting, potentially affecting results. Other factors such as lifestyle, pre-existing conditions, or external stressors might influence outcomes. Triangulation of data can reduce the impact of self-reporting bias and enhances data accuracy. Combining self-reported data with objective measures, such as employer health records, to validate findings. Implementing longitudinal follow-up can enhance the ability to track long-term changes. Implementing strategies such as regular communication, incentives, and flexible participation options to maintain engagement. In this study, we explored the long-term health consequences of chronic work stress among remote employees. Our findings highlight the significant mental and physical health risks associated with prolonged stress in remote work settings. Anxiety, depression, burnout, cardiovascular issues, and sleep disturbances were among the most common health concerns reported by remote workers. Key stressors contributing to this issue include social isolation, blurred work-life boundaries, job insecurity, and lack of manager support. While existing research has established a strong link between workplace stress and negative health outcomes, there is still a gap in understanding how these effects manifest specifically in remote employees over time. These findings have important implications for multiple stakeholders. Employees need to be aware of stress management strategies and ways to maintain a healthy work-life balance. Employers should implement workplace wellness programs and policies that support mental well-being in remote environments. Additionally, policymakers must consider new regulations that address digital overload and ensure remote workers have access to mental health resources. As we move forward, organizations must prioritize stress management initiatives. Employers must invest in structured remote work policies, and further research should explore the long-term effects of chronic work stress across different demographics. By addressing these challenges, we can create healthier and more sustainable remote work environments. Ultimately, understanding and mitigating the health consequences of chronic work stress is essential for promoting both employee well-being and long-term productivity. The following references were used to support the findings in this presentation. These references provide a strong foundation for understanding the health consequences of chronic work stress among remote employees and emphasize the need for further research and intervention strategies. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.